It takes a strategic mind to weaponize trade and history, but a sinister one to weaponize nature. And that's exactly what China is doing to Australia, targeting their most iconic geographical landmark, the Great Barrier Reef. It is one of the 7 natural wonders of the world, a sprawling city below the waves. It's so big that you can actually see it from space, a chain of 900 islands spread across 340,000 square kilometers. Quite simply, a marvel of nature. For Australia, it's also a big source of income. Nearly 5 million tourists visit the Barrier Reef every year. They splurge money on diving, on hotels, on water sports. There's a big industry living off the reefs. But that tourism tap could soon run dry. Let me tell you how. In 1981, the Great Barrier Reef was declared a World Heritage Site. That status is now in danger. A UNESCO panel says the reefs are at risk. So what are they proposing? To shift the Barrier Reef from the World Heritage List to the Heritage in Danger List. And this is a big downgrade. It could cost Australia millions of dollars. You see, an endangered site requires protection, which means restrictions on diving, on swimming, exploring around the reefs. For years, Australia has been fighting this downgrade. So what has changed this time? Well, until now, UNESCO's decisions were rooted in science. But the new committee chair is not big on logic or science. Instead, it specializes in vendetta politics. You probably guessed who we're talking about. China. The panel that proposed this downgrade was headed by China. Beijing has an axe to grind with Australia. It dates back to last year. Australia's Prime Minister demanded a probe into the origins of the Wuhan virus. China was trying to avoid a probe at all cost. Australia pushed for it, and since then, Australia is on China's radar. So here's the question. Is China hijacking UNESCO to settle a political score? Well, Australia certainly thinks so. And looking at China's record, you wouldn't put it past them.
So this decision was flawed. Clearly there were politics behind it. Clearly those politics have subverted a proper process. And for the World Heritage Committee to not even foreshadow this listing is, I think, appalling.
How has China responded to this? With a defiant denial. For Beijing, this is all part of a grand plan to defame them. Stock propaganda there, nothing new. But China's influence at UNESCO is undeniable. It is more about politics than culture. In 2019, the United States left UNESCO, and this created a leadership vacuum. And China was more than happy to step in. Today, it contributes $40 million to the UNESCO budget. That's a lot of power. Unfortunately, China is not conserving culture with this power. Instead, it has politicized UNESCO, and I can give you examples for this. In 2017, a vast Tibetan area was declared a World Heritage Site. It was China's idea. Tibetan groups were staunchly opposed to it, but in the end, it did not matter. China made some vague promises and got the proposal passed. Here's another example. The UNESCO runs an institute called the IBE, that's the International Bureau of Education, IBE. It helps the member states manage curriculum, teaching and assessment. The IBE is headquartered in Geneva, but China is lobbying for a relocation. And if Beijing has its way, this UNESCO institute could soon be in Shanghai. And this is happening in all United Nations agencies, a complete hijack by China. When the UN was first established, people used to say this about America. The headquarters was in New York. So if you wanted to address the assembly, you had to fly in. And now China is doing the same, filling the UN roster with its diplomats and relocating agencies inside its boundaries. Can this strategy be countered? Well, yes, it can. The United Nations is a democracy. At least technically. Every country, big or small, gets one vote. It's the same in the UNESCO. The World Heritage Committee has 21 members. They can choose to vote down China's proposal and retain the Great Barrier Reef in the World Heritage List. But the question is, can rational voices get to them before China does? WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.